朋友们，这两天在国际上出现了一个地缘政治方面最著名的论战，由米尔斯海默和杰弗里萨克斯，他们讨论的重点就是中国。这一个论战在外网的播放量极其高，几十万。今天呢，我准备把一些精彩片段给大家转载一下。大家看之前，我先发表两个简短的观点。第一个观点，我们呢在做类似政治评论，一定要做到知己知彼，不能是我想说什么我怎么认为，咱们还去看看自己的对手他们是怎么说的，他们是怎么想的，知道了别人的想法，对我们自己而言才会有更全面的认知。第二个观点，很明显美国政府现在的做法更接近于米尔斯海默，依然是霸权思维，充满了丛林法则的背影。这个认知造成了美国在关键时刻可以背刺自己的盟友，甚至对自己的同宗同族下手。就像看动物世界，成年的老虎、成年的狮子可能因为领地对自己的父母下手是一模一样子的。美国在关键时刻谁他都可以攻打。所以我们要知道自己的对手是什么样子的。对现在的美国及其海洋文明的国家，枪炮远比嘴巴来得更有力量。接下来大家欣赏一下。
Well, and what are their incentives? Is it war? Is it self-enrichment? Is it power? Is it all three? Is it some combination?
Or is there a philosophical entrenchment? Or is it just this inertial issue that, like, once a policy begins, it's hard to change and the system's just working with 10,000 people working towards it?
You know, if I were lucky to sit next to the world's greatest political philosopher, which I am, he'd give you a good answer, which is that the right answer, which is if you want to interpret American foreign policy, it is to maximize power. John gives an explanation of that. We have some differences, but I think it's a very good description of American foreign policy, which is that it's trying to maximize global power, essentially to be global hegemon. I think it could get us all killed. This is because it's a little bit delusional in my mind, but not his interpretation of their idea, but the fact that they hold that idea is a little weird to me. But in any event, that's the idea. And every time a decision comes inside that I've seen, I'm an economist, so I don't see the security decisions the same way. But every decision that I've seen always leans in the same direction for the last 30 years, which is power as the central objective. So Clinton faced an internal cabinet really debate, should NATO be enlarged?
This is a post-Cold War phenomenon?
Well, I'll let John take that.
Two very quick points. First of all, I do believe that the people who are in favor of this foreign policy do believe in it. It's not cynical. They really believe that we're doing the right thing.
I've met them, yeah.
The second point I would make to you, and this sort of adds on to what Jeff said. Jeff said power has a lot to do with this, and as a good realist, I, of course, believe that. But it's also very important to understand that the United States is a fundamentally liberal country, and we believe that we have a right, we have a responsibility, and we have the power to run around the world and remake the world in America's image. Most people in the foreign policy establishment, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, they believe that. And that is what has motivated our foreign policy in large part since the Cold War ended. Because remember, when the Cold War ends, we have no rival great power left. So what are we going to do with all this power that we have? What we decide to do is go out and remake the world in our own image.
So that's a values point of view, though, right? That there are values that they hold dear, that many do hold dear, that liberalism, democracy does ultimately, I believe I've heard this, reduce conflict worldwide, that there's an importance that we've never seen two democratic nations since World War II go to war, and that there's a reason why we want to see liberalism kind of breed throughout the world, and it's our responsibility for global peace to make that a mandate.
Let me step in for one moment. Okay, sure.
Jeremy, very quickly.
And by the way, what do you call it? Where you pull the spirits of the voice of others? But I'm just trying to channeling. That's the word.
I want to be very clear. I am forever thankful that I was born in a liberal democracy, and I love liberalism. But the question here is, do you think that we can run around the world imposing liberal democracy on other countries, and in some cases shoving it down their throat, doing it at the end of a rifle barrel? And my argument is that's almost impossible to do. It almost always backfires. Think Iraq, Afghanistan, so forth and so on. And secondly, you begin to erode liberalism in the United States because you build a deep state, right? And you want to understand that a lot of the complaints here about cracking down on freedom of speech and so forth and so on are related to the fact that we have this ambitious foreign policy. Those two things go together in very important ways.
What an irony.
Let me disagree just a bit, because we agree actually on the behavior, and I've learned, I'd say most of that from you, that it's power seeking. Truly, John, in my work 40 years overseas, I don't think the U.S. government gives a damn about these other places. I don't think they really care if it's a liberal democracy, if it's a dictatorship. They want the right of ways. They want the military bases. They want the state to be in support of the United States. They want NATO enlargement. I know you've written, and there are some who believe in state building. God, if they do, they are so incompetent, it's unbelievable. But
Professor Sachs,
I'll give you an example if I could. Just one example. I'm a friend with one of the only PhD Afghani economists, senior person in the U.S. Academia over the last 30 years. You would think that the State Department, if they were interested in state building, would ask him one day, one moment, something about Afghanistan. Never happened. Never happened.
Not even one question.
Never happened. He asked me, can you get me a meeting with the State Department? They were completely uninterested. This is about power. You're too idealistic, John. They don't care about the other places. They may feel we should be whatever we want, free and so forth, but freedom, I've seen with my own eyes the coups, the overthrows, the presidents, Democratic presidents led away. They don't care at all. This is Washington. Be a realist. Come on.
Professor Mearsheimer, when we talk about power, there are other people in the world who are trying to accumulate power. We live in a multipolar world right now, and they have, in some cases, very nefarious or bad intent, and they do not have democracy. So it's one thing to, tell people in Afghanistan, you need to evolve, to be a perfect democracy like the one we have here. I think we all agree that's unrealistic and insane and not practical. But what about the free countries of the world uniting together to stop dictators from invading other free countries? Is that noble? Is that a good use of power and a good framework for America to evolve to?
No, I don't think so. I think that what the United States should do is worry about its own national interest. In some cases, that's going to involve aligning ourselves with a dictator. If we're fighting World War II all over again, it's December 8th, 1941, you surely would be in favor of allying with with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union against Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. Sometimes you have to make those kind of compromises. As I said before, I love liberal democracy. I have no problem aligning with liberal democracy. But when you begin to think in the terms that you're thinking, you end up with an impulse to do social engineering around the world. And that gets you in all sorts of problems.
Well, what I'm proposing is when dictatorships invade other countries, then we take action.
It depends.
To maybe defend them.
It depends.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, when Russia invades Ukraine, basically what you're saying is you want to go to war on behalf of Ukraine against Russia? Are you in favor of that?
No, I would say diplomacy would obviously be what we'd want to exhaust. But if they do roll into other free countries, I think there's an argument for the free countries of the world to get together and say, two dictators, we're not going to allow this.
Could I come in here? Could I clarify a few things? Look, first of all, almost all the time that we intervene, it's because we view this as a power situation for the U.S. So whether it's Ukraine or Syria or Libya or other places, even if we define it as defending something, believe me, it's not about defending something. It's about a perception of U.S. power and U.S. interest, and it's in objectives of U.S. global hegemony. And if we analyze the Ukraine conflict just even a little bit below the surface, this is not a conflict about Putin invading Ukraine. This is something a lot different that has to do with American power projection into the former Soviet Union. So it's completely different. Second, if we decide we're the police, which we do, you can't imagine how cynical bullshit we use to justify our actions. We used the cynical bullshit that we're defending the people of Benghazi to bomb the hell out of Libya to kill Muammar Gaddafi. Why did we do that? Well, I'm kind of an expert on that region, and I can tell you maybe because Sarkozy didn't like Gaddafi. There's no much deeper reason except Hillary liked every bombing she could get her hands on. And Obama was kind of convinced. My Secretary of State says, go with it. So why don't we go with the NATO expedition? It had nothing to do with Libya. It unleashed 15 years of chaos, cheated the UN Security Council, because like everything else we've done, it was on false pretenses. We did the same with trying to overthrow Syria. We did the same with conspiring to overthrow Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine in February 2014. So the problem with this argument is we're not nice guys. We're not trying to save the world. We're not trying to make democracies. We had a committee, by the way, of all the luminaries you could mention, but they're the neocon crazies, but they're luminaries. The Committee for the People of Chechnya. Are you kidding? Do you think they even knew where Chechnya is or cared about Chechnya? But it was an opportunity to get at Russia, to weaken Russia, to support a jihadist movement inside Russia. This is a game, but it's a game that John has described better than anyone in the world. It's a game of power. It's not that we're defending real things. If you want to defend real things, go to the UN Security Council and convince others, because the other countries are not crazy and they don't want mayhem in the world. But we play games, so they say, that's a game, Iraq, which was obviously a game before we went in. It was obviously Colin Powell could not move his lips without lying that day. Obviously. And so they said no. But if we're real about our interests, then you go to the UN Security Council, and then it's not just on us. It's actually then a collective security issue.